Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And there's been a revelation about the SNP and the Not My King protest outside St Giles. It turns out that the SNP signed off on the protest point being just 50 yards from the entrance to the cathedral. It could be seen on the cameras all over the place, and of course it could be heard while the events were going on inside the cathedral. Now, this video isn't whether you are pro-royalty or a Republican. I don't care. That's not the issue with this video. What this is showing that the SNP cannot in future be trusted to do anything without a political slant. And so, should they want to host something not contentious, people will think, no, maybe not. Maybe I won't go to Scotland because they politicise this or they politicise that. And it will put off prospective people from sort of thinking, Scotland would be a good place to host this G7 or whatever, because they're going to just put the protest right there. Now, of course, they deliberately did this in this particular case because they wanted to be petty, spiteful and vindictive, because that's all they are. They're not professional. They could have easily said, yes, okay, we know that there is going to be a bit of a moan about it, but we'll put them 300 yards away, well out the way from the cathedral, because even though we don't disagree, we don't agree with it, we don't want to ruin the day for other people, and we want to at least respect other people's firm political views and not spoil one day for them. They could have done that. They could have chosen to play the big man, and instead they chose to play the little petty, spiteful, hurt bitch. So let's have a look at this video, this article, and see what has gone on and why we can never really trust them to grow up, because all they are is childish. Here goes. So, fury as it emerges, the SNP government signed off on the Republican rabble at the doors of St Giles. Questions asked as it emerges that the Scottish Government and Police Scotland agreed that the designated protest point in the Lawn Market, just 50 yards from the entrance of the cathedral. And there's no reason that they couldn't have put them 300 yards away. They deliberately chose that because they deliberately wanted to make a very petty, spiteful political point. And as I say, this isn't about whether you're pro or anti the monarchy. It's about the professionalism of the SNP. Grow up and, stop making petty, cheap little points. You make yourself look petty. You make yourselves look cheap. And you certainly are. The Scottish Government signed off on plans to position Republican protesters just yards from the entrance to St Giles' Cathedral. As a result, a small but noisy group of anti-monarchists were in prime position to heckle King Charles as he arrived for Wednesday's service of Thanksgiving. They were also in a prominent spot to be caught on TV cameras, because of course that was what it was all about. Make your tiny little point. Humza Yousaf really must have the world's tiniest penis. It must be that small, because he needs to constantly push his event at all time to make him look like the big man on the world stage. All these world leaders are looking at him and thinking, my God, what a petty, tiny little man. What a mind, what a man with such a tiny mind and a tiny, tiny penis. Anyway, to the embarrassment of the nation, their chants and catcalls could be heard by millions of television viewers around the world during a solemn service. This is despite the fact that the protesters made up only a tiny minority of the thousands who turned out to cheer the King and Queen. SNP ministers are now facing questions as to why they agreed on the two designated protest points, one outside the Scottish Parliament and the other on the Lawn Market in the shadow of the cathedral. You simply could have put them 300 yards away and that would have been enough. Scottish Conservative culture spokesman Donald Cameron hit out at the decision, and he said that people will wonder why the SNP Green government felt this particular point was suitable for protesters. He added, while nobody would deny their right to protest, many understandably felt their closeness to the ceremony spoiled their enjoyment given what ensued. It would have been much more enjoyable had the massive crowd turned around to them and decided that they would take the matter into their own hand and shut them up, because the police were obviously not going to. And people have to remember, we are many, they are few, and it applies to virtually everything. When it comes to politicians and the people, we are many, they are few. We are the ones with the power. And had they turned around and just went, do you know what, enough of your shit, and done what needed to be done, that would have been an end to it. Anyway, lessons, he continued, this is Cameron, lessons should be learned ahead of any future royal visits to the capital so they can run as smoothly as possible. The protest outside the Parliament, where Scottish Greens co-leader Patrick I'm a Dick Harvey addressed a sparse crowd of about 50 to 75 people. That was all there was. Literally, it was two men and their dog, and then this little tiny leprechaun, the IRA-loving leprechaun, who has two little round bald heads to polish each day, tried to speak to them. But nobody really cares about him. He is a nothing, isn't he? He's a minuscule little man with a minuscule little mind and pettiness and bitterness. He's always on the losing side. Every single thing he does. He's a Green minority. He's a Republican minority. He's a nationalist minority. His whole life loses. He's gone into Parliament. Oh, we got power now. Every single thing the Greens have done failed. He's just a failure, and he's a tiny little man with a massive ego, and another one with them, tiny cock. Anyway, the chanting event continued while First Minister Humza Yousaf had previously spoken of his anti-monarchy views, gave a reading during the service, but nobody could hear it over the chanting. Oh, the irony, Humza, the irony. He quite liked it, you know. He was smiling. He enjoyed it. If you actually watched it, Humza Yousaf, oh, yeah, monarchy, terrible things. I'm a Republican. Oh, I'm close to the king now. Oh, and you could see him. He was grinning. He was happy. He was genuinely happy to be there. He thinks he is a bit hypocritical. He's had a taste, you know, the old Dolce Vita. Come and meet the king, have a little quaff of champagne. Oh, this is very nice, isn't it? Oh, a little bit more of this. All of a sudden, republicanism softens. Anyway, a Scottish government spokesman said that dedicated areas were set up for peaceful protest in a number of locations adjacent to ceremonial areas. He said areas were chosen based on advice from police and event managers in line with our obligations to allow peaceful protest. Bullshit! Absolute bullshit. You could have put it 300 yards away, it would have been just as peaceful, but you chose to put it there to make a political point because you knew the cameras would be on you and you could hear it inside. You petty-minded, tiny little people. You are nobodies, aren't you? Absolute charmless wankers, obviously. Anyway, Police Scotland confirmed yesterday that Imogen Robertson, 23, and Hannah Torrance Bright, 21, were arrested and later charged for allegedly attempting to climb over a crowd barrier. They were released on an undertaking to appear at Edinburgh Sheriff Court on Tuesday. They're at least going to go into jail, but they will get a fine and costs and probably a bounding over. And that'll do them, but it's nice. It's nice to see that they're going to have to pay for their stupidity. What's his name? Heinlein. Robert Heinlein. He once said they've never repealed the death penalty for stupidity. And they've not repealed fines for it either. Anyway, Assistant Chief Constable Tim Mares said Police Scotland worked with the Holyrood Executive and the City of Council to identify a dedicated protest area to maximise public safety. I think what they mean is to maximise exposure in front of the cameras to make sure that they got their political point across. Because don't forget, who appoints the senior police? Oh, that'll be the SNP. And you know exactly the kind of people they're appointing. 2 other arrests were made. William Duncan, 47, on suspicion of theft, and Antonio, I don't know if it's Junkel or Jonsel, whatever, 43, on an outstanding warrant. Oh dear, you've got an outstanding warrant and you go where there's going to be lots of policemen. You deserve to be arrested, you fucking idiot. Anyway, there were 4 recorded warnings were handed out. There were no arrests arising from the designated process sites, and I think that's a shame. Anyway, I shall come up and round off. But yeah, it just goes to show that the SNP really are petty, tiny-minded, childish tossers, really, aren't they? They could have put that slightly further, and then everybody could have heard Humza Yousaf speak as he admiringly gazed at the king. What a hypocrite. I'm coming up. So there you go. You've got the SNP. They're just proving how small they really are. They're a tiny little vindictive nobody group, aren't they? And the great thing is they won't be there for much longer. Of course, the number of people who are royalists massively outnumber the people who are Republicans. And so at the next election, don't vote along party lines. hold your nose for one election, right? And when it doesn't matter if you're in a strong Labour seat or a strong Tory seat, fine, just carry on. But if you're in a seat that is a current SNP seat, look to see who is the party most likely to beat the SNP. And regardless of who you support, vote for that party. If you're a Labour and it's a Conservative seat, hold your nose, vote Tory. If you're a Tory in a Labour seat, it's going to be a Labour win. Hold your nose, vote Labour. Because you're not voting for the Tories or for Labour. You're voting against the SNP. Wipe them out. Take them out entirely. Give them no seats. Give them no influence. And let them have nothing. Because that's what they deserve. Because this is... what they're actually doing is treating Scotland with contempt. Because they're not showing Scotland to its best. They're highlighting the differences. Just at the time when you need to be coalescing and reducing differences. But the SNP are always wanting them and us. Them and us. Them and us. Nationalism. Fervent nationalism. It's exactly the same as the National Socialists during the Second World War. But then they are so similar. I've done the video on how the SNP members keep going abroad and doing speeches to the supporters of all those brave men who fought with the Waffen-SS. I kid you not. Go and have a look at the video if you haven't seen it. Anyway, I shall round off there. One last thing I want to say. I want to say to Audrey Stewart. Audrey, thank you very much. I did say I'd give you a call out. You know what you've done. It's very appreciated. It's always appreciative of things like that because it always helps us to maintain the channel, just to keep going, to keep pushing and keep hopefully getting the truth out there. So thank you very much. Tips hat, and salutes. And I shall finish there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see in here on the channel, do please subscribe. Do please like the video. Always helps when you like the video. Pushes it up in the metrics. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and remember, they'll soon be gone. Bye.